Hi, and welcome to Chapter 14. Chapter 14, really kind of a neat chapter because it allows us to lay things out and position things properly on the screen. The very first thing this chapter talks about is different types of positioning. So we actually have four of them. We have one that's called absolute, and what that means is let's just kind of read it and we'll talk about it. So it says absolute positioning lets you determine an element's location by specifying a left, right, top, or bottom position in pixels, ems, or percentages. And you can place a box 20 pixels from the top and 200 pixels from the left edge, as shown in figure 14.1. Okay, so here is absolute. So it's floating above the page 20 pixels down. So and it would basically, in addition, absolutely positioning elements are completely detached from the flow of the page determined by the HTML code. So it's kind of like a float, except that it will stay in that position, okay? Relative is basically, again, think of it like a true relative. It will stay in position to something that it's basically relative to. Okay, so relatively positioned element is placed relatively to its current position. So for example, setting a top value of 20 pixels and left of 200, it moves that headline 20 pixels down and 20 pixels from the left wherever it would normally appear. So if we look down here, here is relative. So it says right here, in this particular case, the black strip represents where the div would normally appear, but its top value of 20 pixels on left of 300 moves it down and over from where its original position was. Okay, so it's relative to the header in that case. So unlike with absolute positioning, other page elements accommodate the old HTML placement of relativity. You can read that. Accordingly, moving an element with a relative positioning leaves a hole, whereas the element would have been. Look at the dark strip at the bottom. Okay, we just kind of covered that. Fixed is just that. It's fixed to a position, and that's where it stays. A fixed element is locked into a place on the screen. It does the same thing as fixed value for background attachment. So as we scroll up and down, they don't show it here, but as you scroll up and down, that thing will stay fixed on that position. So think of like having a nice menu on the left hand side of your page that will stay there. As you scroll up and down here, this stays fixed in that position. We also have static, and that's kind of like a float. It just basically stays right there, and basically it will scroll with the page. Okay. So fixed, we're kind of used to static so far. So if I place something on a page, I really don't use the word static. I just place it on the page and it stays there. Okay. So, so let's kind of look at our tutorial. And so here's a tutorial. So what we are going to do is we are going to take this guy and make it a lot better. And what I mean by that is where the boxes are going to basically appear across the page in a boxed format, and this text is going to be on the object itself. What's really cool, if we take a look at what it would look like, this is what it would look like, or this is what it's going to look like when we are done. I click on it. Notice this hat is floating here. I shouldn't say float, but it's here. And notice this text is in front of it. We've got a nice menu to the side over here. The text that you see for each picture is gone, or is it? If I hover over that picture, the text appears. Ooh, magic. So, really cool. So you notice we see everything in a nice blocked format. In this case, since we have 9 pictures, it appears 3 by 3. So really kind of a neat way to do that. So we come back over here and look. So let's kind of look at our code. So again, we've already got a lot of things in place for again, you can kind of look at this at your own leisure. We basically have our reset. We always have our reset stuff there to kind of reset everything, make sure that everything kind of starts at the same square one. And then we've already got some fonts set up and some different body cascading style sheet stuff kind of going on there. So we're going to add all of our stuff here to the bottom. Okay, so So come down here, and again, they're showing what it looks like now. And what we're going to do is, the first thing we're going to do is going to add this header tag. Let's add it and let's talk about it. So I add it here. So it says within the header tag, there's going to anything. So any badge class inside of the header tag is going to have these styles. So the position is going to be absolute, the top is going to be -20, and the left is going to be -90. Ooh, that's kind of wild. That means it's going to be above the page this way and 90 degrees off page, I should say, I'm looking for you, this way. So let's save it and see what happens. Well, before we do that, let's take a look at the code. So we come up here, and that was the badge inside of the header tag. So here's the header. And it says the hat gallery image, and here's the class badge. Okay, so we've got our nav is inside of there, or our image, I'm sorry, image, which is the hat.png. That's a little hat that was by the tag up there. That has the class badge attached to it, and it's inside of the header tag. So this is what it looks like currently. So this is that hat tag. When I do a refresh, notice just like it said, it's -20 top margin. That means it's going above the page, and -90 to the left. So now it's basically off to the left side. So we got to do some fixing, don't we? So it basically it says in here that that's exactly what happens. So now what we're going to do is we're going to fix it. We're going to make it so that the margin top is 20. I'm sorry, we're going to change the header. So the header is now going to be, we're going to add these two lines, sorry. Add these two lines to the header. So let's add them, let's talk about them. So come over here, and here is my, where's my header? Do I have a header? Do I have to add it? Apparently I have to add it. Header H1. Okay, apparently I have to add it, so let's go ahead and just do that. Let's add the entire thing. I'm going to add it to the top up here. So, position is relative. That means it's now whatever it's inside of, so it's going to be relative to the header. So wherever the header is, that's where it's going to appear inside of. Or I should say the header is going to basically be relative to the body that it's inside of. The margin top is going to be 20 pixels. Padding is 20 pixels on the top, 0 for the right, 0 for the bottom, and 10 pixels for the left. So now we basically have this badge inside of the header that's going to basically take care of that. So let's see what happens. And we do a refresh. And now, okay, so what's going on here is this. Let's take a look at the code. So my header is inside of the body. And now the header basically, so the header is a tag, and it's basically a box at the top up there, and now that's basically given a margin of 10. It's got a margin of 20 pixels. That's 20 pixels all the way around. So now when I do -20, so 20 and -20 is 0. That pushes that hat to the very top then. And that -90 then basically is, the top is, or the left is -90, the left here is 0. So that basically kind of pushes it past, what would that be? The difference between 90 and 10 is, what, 80? So it's going to push it 80 pixels, I should say, point to you, to the left. So it's going to hang outside of the header 80 pixels. So again, if we look at this, so the left edge is right here, and this guy's now hanging 80 pixels off to the left. Okay? But you notice the hat is on top of the T. We'd like it behind the T. So let's see how we can fix that. So we add this z-index -1. And if you remember from 120, we talked about the z-index. It says, the gallery headline is partially hidden underneath the badge. Overlapping elements is one of the hazards of absolute positioning. So again, we told it we want to so the header, this one is absolute. It says it will absolutely be here. Relative says it's relative to what it's inside of. This one says, I don't care, this is absolutely right here. That's why, since it's inside of the header, if I had that position relative, it would basically be inside the header then. This is absolute, so it's absolutely going to be here. So, has to take into consideration the header information, but it's absolutely going to appear right there. The z-index says this. The -1 value places the absolute position element behind its parent. So the z positioning, so we have x and y. So remember, x and y is up and down, or up and to the, this way and this way. The z-index is basically where it appears inside of things stacked on top of it. Okay, when we say -1, that says push it behind something else. So I copy that. I come over here, and that's in the, I'll make sure I got in the right spot. It goes in the header badge. So I go to the header badge, and I add the z-index -1 that says place it behind whatever it's in front of, or whatever's in the same place it's at, make sure it's behind it. So come over here, do a refresh, and boom, notice that the hat now appears behind the text. Okay. Pretty good so far. So, so we're going to add another style. This is a header nav. So any nav tag that appears inside of the header is going to have this particular style. So let's go ahead and add it. And it says that the position is absolute. That means it's going to absolutely appear here. Where? Well, it's going to have a right margin of 0. I should say it's going to go to the right to 0. So it's going to appear from the right 0 inside of the header now. And the top is going to be 45 pixels. Okay, so the top of it is going to come down 45, and it's going to basically be all the way to the right hand side. So again, within the header. So if we watch this nav right here, again, let's take a look at the code, the actual code. So here is our nav inside of the header. It's now going to appear where? Boom, it's going to appear to the right of the text. And again, it's all the way up to the header. So 0 right and 45 pixels down. Sometimes we have to kind of experiment. We might have to maybe make it 40 or 35, see how it looks, and then maybe add some pixels to it. I would actually like that to be more centered with the text itself, not the uppercase, but maybe the lowercase. So you could actually come in here and make that, let's make it 49 pixels. Push it down just a little bit. And sure enough, it came down. It's now more in line with the lowercase text. Okay, so far so good. So it says placing captions on the photos. So within the text we have right now, we've got figures and we got figure captions. So our figures is the actual pictures that we have. So a figure has an image, and then inside of the figure we have a figure caption. Okay, so what we want to do is, and again, if you notice, let's take a look at the actual HTML. So what we have is we have a div class gallery, and that guy ends at the end. So every single one of these figures and figure captions are all inside of this class gallery. So here's what we're saying. Any figure inside of the gallery class is going to be display inline block. We know what that is. That means it goes across until it hits. That drops down a line and goes across, drops down a line, goes across, drops down. It keeps doing that. So it keeps everything on a nice block. The width is going to be 300 pixels. Okay. So we're going to have 300 pixels to put these things inside of. The height is 210, so the height of this item is going to be 310 or 210, and that's basically the height of each row. And the margin is going to be 15. So each figure inside of that gallery class is going to have a 15 pixel margin all the way around it. Because I didn't say margin top, right, left, bottom. I could say margin 15 pixels, 15 pixels, 15 pixels, 15 pixels, but that basically is unneeded. If I just put 15 pixels, that's top, bottom, or top, right, bottom, left. The position is relative. That means it's relative to the gallery class, and that's inside of the header class. I'm sorry. So no, it's inside of the gallery class. So it's going to be relative to the gallery class. So it's going to all be inside of that guy. So I highlight all that, copy it, and I go ahead and paste it here at the bottom. So again, display inline block, we know what that does. The width of each row, each end line is going to be 300. The height is going to be 210. The margin is going to be, no, I think that's for each one. For each figure is going to be 300, right? So each figure is 300. The height of each figure is 210. Margin's 15. Positions relative to the gallery class. So save it, and we come over here and we do a refresh, and voila, beautiful. Okay, really looks nice. Now notice everything kind of goes across in rows, rows, rows. So 300 height, 210 width. We got a nice 15 pixel border around each one. Life is good. Okay. So then we're going to add another style. These are the fig captions. All the fig captions inside of the gallery class are going to be position absolute. Now we want this to be absolutely positioned in this spot where the top is the top. It's going to be 15% down from the top. Again, this is inside the figure class. The bottom is 15%, so 15% up. Left is 0, right is 0. Background color is 150 feet. I think that's a grayish color, and it's going to be 90% transparent. Okay, so I highlight this guy, copy it, and I paste it in. So there it is. Positions absolute, top 15%, bottom 15%, left, right 0. Bottom color is that gray, 90% transparent. Save it, refresh. Look at that. So notice that's more than it's 0.9% transparent, so we can see through it. Nice gray. Can't see the picture though, can we? So we got to do something about that text. We really need to do something about that text. So to do that, we're going to add padding 20 pixels. We're going to change the font family to a different, so it looks, so Titanium is going to be our first choice, Arial's our second choice, and the default sans serif font is our third choice. Font weight is 400. The font size is 0.9 ems, and the color is white. Okay, so font weight, that's the bolding, it's 400. So we copy that. We come over here, we're going to add that to the bottom of this. So there's our padding, our font family, a little bold, change the font size, change the color to white. So the font color will be white. Okay. We come over here, we take a look. There it is. So notice that the bolding, it's a little bolded, a different font, font white, cool. Life is good. So then we're going to add to the dot gallery fig caption, we're going to add opacity of 0. It says setting the opacity to 0 makes the caption invisible. Ooh, why the heck would we want to do that? So if we add that, make sure I got in the right spot. This is the fig caption. Okay. So I add it. There's our opacity. It's now invisible. Do a refresh. Sure enough, it's invisible. It's there. We just can't see it. Why the heck would we do that? Well, we'll see here in a second. So now we're going to add a dot gallery. Let's just copy it and add it, and we'll talk about it. So now if you look, it says within the dot, or within the gallery class, if you hover over the figure, we want the figure caption to have an opacity of 1. What's that? And it's no longer invisible. So it's invisible when it's just sitting there, but when we hover over the figure, we want the fig caption to have an opacity of 1. And again, this is for everything inside of the gallery class. So we save it. We come over here and do a refresh. It doesn't look any different until I what? I hover. Ooh, isn't that lovely? So that's nice, okay? So it's kind of a nice thing. So we're selling hats. We're trying to basically show what a hat looks like. If you want to know more about that hat, you hover over it, and it basically tells us about that hat. Okay? So really, really a neat thing to do, especially on a site where you're trying to sell something. We want just it to show graphical stuff, and then we're going to add some of our text to it when you hover over it. I really like this hat. It's just a fun hat. Okay, so we're going to add this transition property. It says while Internet 9 and earlier don't understand transition, that's okay. The captions will still appear in the browsers. They'll just appear and disappear instantly instead of fading out. So what we want is we want a transition for our fig caption. This is just our fig caption up here. We want the opacity to be 0.75 seconds and to ease out. That means it's going to basically fade in and fade out. Okay, so we save it. We come over here and we do a refresh. And now when I hover over it, see how it kind of fades in and fades out? Ooh. That's a nice transition. It doesn't just pop in and out like it did before. It fades in, fades out, fades in, fades out. So that's a really neat feature. Really neat. Okay, the last thing we're going to add is something about footer. We'll add it and let's talk about it. So we want the position to be fixed. That means it's going to stay at that position always. It will never, ever change. The bottom is 0. It's going to be at the bottom. The left, 0. Right, 0. So it's going to basically be at the bottom and fill both left and right. Padding is going to be 10. So inside of the footer is 10 pixels all the way around. Background color is black. The color of the font is going to be white. So save it. And well, first of all, let's take a look. What is our footer? If I come in here, I can see I have a footer. We've got a div class of copyright. We've got the copyright stuff and then the ending div tag. So that's basically what that, so this particular text is now part of the footer, and we basically change it so it's fixed. It's going to be on the page at the bottom always. So come over here, I do a refresh. And sure enough, there it is. So if I could scroll up and down, if I had more pictures, as we scroll up and down, that copyright, that footer, would always be there at the bottom. Now notice that it looks like it's got some padding on the left. Remember, it's still inside of this the class that basically, like we discussed last week, we have stuff on the sides, which I kind of wanted to get to. If you look in your book, The Adaptive Web Design, on page 48, it basically has an article called "Don't Fill the Space." Okay, and so I really want you to read that particular that section, because it's really good about, hey, we don't need to fill, we need some white space off to the side, or we need, it doesn't have to be white space, we'll call it white space, but it can be any color you want, but we don't want this whole page to take up everything. And the reason for that is as we move from a desktop to computer to a tablet to a phone, we basically want things to fit the screen better. And as we get to the responsive section, we'll see how we can get rid of those white spaces and have it then fill the screen as we get to smaller and smaller devices. There's also a nice section on, if I can find it here. And this kind of gets into the ARIA. It's basically called Clarify Interfaces with ARIA. And that gets into those things, those roles that we talked about. Remember, we had aside and we had main. Those are different roles. And it kind of gets a nice deep discussion on those things. That's a good place to go as well. I'm sorry, the ARIA stuff is on page 83. I think I gave you a page number for the other one, which was page 48. Don't fill the space on page 48. So some really neat things there to basically utilize as well. There's also on page 69, starts on page 68, and it's called microdata. It's RDFA and microdata. And what this kind of does is really kind of cool, is it allows us to do things. For example, it says we can use this microdata vocabulary to describe a book. For example, on the web page for the first edition of a tome, first I set up things with an HTML on it. It says lang equals en, okay, which means English. And we utilize this a lot in the company I work for, because we have customers in Canada, and we also have customers who basically speak Spanish. So we can actually put in there lang equals CA. That stands for Canada. You think, well, what's the difference between English in the U.S. and English in Canada? Well, there's a lot. For example, jewelry. If we spell jewelry in the United States as J-E-W, jewelry, okay, jewel, and then R-Y at the end. Where with Canadians, they spell it jewelry, so J-E-W-E-R and then E-R-Y. Color, we spell it C-O-L-O-R. They spell it C-O-U-L-U-R, which is, or C-O-R, color, so C-O-L-O-U-R, okay? And so there's a few differences like that between the languages. Obviously, if it's Spanish, which is ES, it basically does. So what that does for us is this. We can have language sets so that if we type language ES, it will basically change that to Spanish. Okay, we can have it coded so that if we see ES, it automatically changes to Spanish. So, trying to find the other thing. Okay. Another thing too is we have what's called the ABBR tag. It's abbreviation tag. So for example, I could come in here and say, oh, I'm just going to say this, that Peoria, comma, I'm going to put a tag of ABBR title equals Illinois, and then an ending tag, and then I just put IL, and then an ending abbreviation tag. So what that will do for us is, I think if I click on this and I do a save, and I come out here and do a refresh, it's got Peoria, and if I hover over that, it comes up and says that's an abbreviation for Illinois. So kind of a nice thing to think about. So as we abbreviate things, for example, a lot of acronyms are out there. So we can have acronyms and we can use the abbreviation tags to let folks know what that abbreviation or what that particular item stands for. Okay, so some things to kind of put in your homework assignments and kind of utilize, and I'll put those in the assignments so that, and I'll put the page numbers and all that so you can basically work with. With that, again, make sure you read that section on don't fill the space. Very, very, very important to kind of know how to make sure your page looks good. White space is good, especially on the sides. We don't have to fill the entire page. So it's a nice thing to work with. Okay, have fun with this, and we'll see you next time.